Okay, we're down to the second to last episode with numbers 12 through 7. Number 12, Treehouse of Horror 2. I'm sure there's going to be a lot of mad people wondering why I didn't place this higher. After all, it is an earlier one, and usually the earlier ones are better. And yes, most of the earlier ones did make the higher on the list here. The only reason why I didn't really choose this one as higher, because I thought the first two were very decent, but the last one I felt just kind of was there. So yeah. And I gotta admit, this is, with the monkey's paw, is just really good. I mean, it's just pretty hysterical, especially when Homer tries to go like, hey, where's the store? And it's like, oh, there it is. And I thought that's a great subjugation of expectations, and The Simpsons is usually very good at that. In this case, they shined on this. I like the meta commentary about The Simpsons, which was actually pretty smart for the time. A lot of meta commentary is now everywhere now, thanks to internet culture. But Simpsons was doing it before internet was really there. So honestly, I give Simpsons points for being ahead of their time, and thank you very much. And of course, we get Kane and Kodos in here, who have been in there. I know I've gone out of my way on this by saying that they make guest appearance every time, and I think the way they were used in this episode was pretty good. So then we get into this Twilight Zone episode, or this one where Bart essentially has unlimited power. And one of the things I like about this is because this was really the first time where The Simpsons really started to embrace that dark Homer, or that dark humor aesthetic. Excuse me, I said Homer. Anyway, you get what I'm saying, because there are a lot of these Treehouse of Horror sketches which are not funny, but they are done very well with their horror aspects, and I totally applaud them for that. It's a fine balance that they do here. It really is. It is very, very difficult, but they do it and stuff like that. Now, yeah, this last story goes absolutely nowhere. It's just like Mr. Burns wants to put a brain in a robot and he uses Homer's brain. That's it. And it's so poorly done. I kind of think, like, even if I was watching this back then, I probably would have said, yeah, I don't really like this one. So yeah, I think I would have not liked this one back if I would have saw it. A lot of these things I have to really turn back the clock and go like, okay, would I have liked this back then? Especially if there's a message that's very dated on it. In this case, that last story really brought this down in the top 36. But hey. Number 11, Treehouse of Horror 32. To be honest, I am actually surprised I put this so high on the list. And that goes for a lot of these very recent Treehouse of Horror ones. This is one that just really shouldn't have worked, simply because they were trying something experimental, but honestly, I'm very glad they did. I mean, to try and put 5 stories in here is maybe not a good idea, and honestly, really only 2 of them shine here, but they shine pretty well, so I had to give this one a bit higher up the list. Like I mentioned before, their version of Parasite I actually think is very good, and very honestly, this one version is so good. If they had taken out a lot of the massacre at the end, this actually could have been a simple episode of The Simpsons, really. Parasite is not necessarily a horror story, but it does have some very horrifying things to say about class structure. So that's kind of what I like about it. And they did a very decent job, so I had to give them points for that, even though that there is one sketch in here that I think is absolute junk that I don't really think is good, but sadly some of the other ones are so good that they made the list. The one that's junk isn't this one, even though I gotta admit it goes really nowhere. Essentially, a tree comes to life, and then more trees come to life, and then there's a big tree war. What else is there? I don't really see the point to this. If it had some sort of big metaphorical statement to say, maybe that would be one thing, but it really doesn't, honestly. I feel like this is one of those stories that they would try out on, say, Futurama, and they would actually make a good point. But in this case, it doesn't really go anywhere. So, yeah. And then here's the crap one, the one where we have the Vincent Price doing the Telltale Bart. There's really, they definitely dressed up the animation style, and hey, I always like it when they do that. However, there are times when they do that it just doesn't seem to work, and this is one of those times. Dead Ringer. I've never seen The Ring. I'm going to be very honest with you. I think maybe part of that is like maybe I'm afraid to watch it because I have heard it is a very horrifying horror film, and maybe I'll watch it before the end of this week because after all we're into Halloween and stuff. I just like this sketch because I think it's very funny, and I think they kind of do the source material a lot of justice, just like they did the Parasite one. So yeah, this gets credit. If this episode would be a lot higher on the list if they probably had gone with 3 episodes and then put a semi-decent one in the middle of, say, this side of Parasite and Dead Ringer. So yeah, but honestly, I'm very surprised. I mean, when they got experimental, I'm actually surprised this ends up being very high on the list. I'm sure there's going to be a lot of people that's... Number 10, Treehouse of Horror 4. Now, if you've ever watched this one, there's really only one reason why this is so high on this list. And part of this is because this is back in the time they used the framing device. The Devil and Homer Simpson is one of the best Treehouse of Horrors ever. It's easily in my top 10 list. Just the way this story starts, plays out, and then the twists and turns in it make it so hysterical. It is absolutely one of the most perfect Treehouse of Horror episodes ever. And it's one of those where it's like every time I watch it, I still laugh as hard as I did when I first watched it because there's just so much stuff going on in this. And this is one of those times where I think the compressed storytelling actually works for it because the jokes happen very quickly and the story progresses very quickly, and it has a very decent moral at the end. I was actually very surprised at this one. And of course, the ironic punishment that Homer beats is just hysterical. And hey, look, it's Nixon. That was kind of a Simpsons predicts the future. Nah, this isn't one of those, and we're not going to go into that area, okay? But I can't praise that one sketch enough. I really wish I could have put it higher, but sadly, I didn't really think the 2 sketches afterwards could compete with the goodness that is this one. Terror at 5 Feet, though, I have to admit, is pretty great adaptation of its source material. And I think I've said this before, that sometimes the Treehouse of Horror comes across as demented and scary. And when that happens, that can be very good, and you don't need jokes. And oftentimes that happens so well that it's just, I have to treat it as its own thing, like not as comedy. And it is horror. And wow, this one kind of works. The way the people on the bus are responding to Bart is just what makes that really work. This one, I just feel like this is a Simpsons following whatever fad is the latest thing. Can't remember if this is the first time they did this on the Treehouse of Horror, but yeah, usually if a horror movie comes out that's popular, Simpsons might imitate it on Treehouse of Horror. I can imagine they might do weapons here pretty soon. But this one, though, starts just as a straight-up parody of Dracula, the Francis Ford Coppola film, but then ends up being The Lost Boys. And I think for that reason, the fact that it changes that is one of the reasons why this isn't higher up on the list. I felt like this one kind of just sort of starts well, but ends very suddenly, and you probably know what I'm talking about if you've seen this particular one before. So, number 9, Treehouse of Horror 11. And this is one of those that kind of took me by surprise that it was as good as it was. And this also has some pretty classic episodes. Now, this first story of Ghost Dad, I have to admit, is kind of weak. It reminds me of the one called Heaven Swipes Right, which wasn't really that memorable particular one. But I do like the setup for this, of how getting Homer to die and stuff like that. There are a lot of very good jokes in here, and I think The Simpsons seems like the further back you go, the better the jokes landed with The Simpsons. And I really felt like this one had some really bad premises and wasn't able to make a lot of this stuff work. But when you got down to it, it was funny. You could watch it and laugh and just kind of keep laughing. It's one of the great things about The Simpsons, and keeps them coming back every season for as long as they're going to do. So, and then this one where they just kind of go into lots of fairy tales and stuff like that. This was this could get really creative, and they really went all out. One of the things I like about the Treehouse of Horror is They'll often start with a very supernatural premise or something like that, and it branches out and then branches out again and branches out again, and they really milk all the jokes for what they're worth. And yeah, there was a thing where it was like, I can't remember if did this come out the same year as Shrek or maybe afterwards, but it is an irreverent take on fairy tales, and so and which even The Simpsons was not the first to do this, but hey, it's what you got here. So, and yeah. Then we get to Night of the Dolphin, and this is one that I compared this to David Lynch, but I'm not even sure if he would be the correct filmmaker to compare this prospect to. It just kind of felt like his sort of body of work, like creating something very weird and very horrific at the same time. And this one really goes all out with this premise of dolphins invading, this idea of this cute little creature just somehow assembling en masse and trying to kill us. There's something that might not float your boat. This might be lower on your list of things, and for that reason, it's not as high as it could be. But I looked at the premise for what it was, and I was kind of laughing throughout this whole thing, and I just felt like I was very awed by the premise that they could pull this off, and I think they kind of did. That's why it is so high on the list. Number 8, Treehouse of Horror 23. Man, I am surprised at how many of these supposed mid-tier or over Treehouse of Horror 20 episodes made this list. But a lot of them are still darn good. And some of them I'm actually surprised that top the list are very, very recent. But this one is in its, 23, so we're in the 24th season now. This could have easily been one of their worst ones, but honestly, turned out to be one of the better ones. The idea of this one, the greatest story ever told, I felt like this was kind of touched upon in another sketch they did. The very first one with Bad Dream House. There was a black hole in their house, and they just threw something in there. And I sort of get the feeling like they just sort of took that concept and made an entire sketch out of it, which is a great idea in general, this idea of somebody just... I mean, can you imagine if we had something like that? I mean, yeah, and what was on the other side? Who knows? I think what really makes this score is this one, this version of Paranormal Activity, which I think is, they really borrow the atmosphere of those Paranormal Activity movies. I've only really seen the first one in that series. I'm just not really wanting to see the second one and stuff like that. But I mean, it's definitely low-budget, guerrilla-style filmmaking, and The Simpsons imitates this to a T. And they do it so well that it actually kind of comes up being a little bit scary, kind of. So I'll give them credit for that. It's not exactly one of their funnier ones, but it is one of those ones that they really went all out in it. As far as going all out in it, Bart and Homer's Excellent Adventure, oh my gosh. I actually think, I kind of wish they'd call this one Bart to the Future. I feel like that feels like a more appropriate title than that. There is a time travel aspect of this, but this more parodies Back to the Future than it does Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure. And this one, the story goes great directions, where Bart goes back in time to just buy a comic book and then ends up meeting Homer, and then decides to prevent Homer from marrying Marge, not realizing, just totally throwing caution to the wind, not realizing this, you might just invalidate your birth, dude. But no, turns out that there's some interesting thing, and they brought back Artie Ziff, an interesting character that we've seen from time to time whenever Simpsons does flashback episodes. So this kind of was one of their Simpsons flashback episodes, in this case to the 70s. Now when they do flashback episodes, they have to do them in like the 90s, almost even the 2000s, just because, well, time, and Simpsons has been on so long. But it is a great story and is almost a near perfect sketch. Number 7, Treehouse of Horror 21. Okay, we are getting into the, I guess, alright, so this came out like over 20 years ago, I think, and it's still pretty good. I guess TiVo was pretty popular back then because it begins with this thing where Frank introduces the thing talking about a DVR. So, hey, kind of dates it, but still kind of funny. This Office thing, though, I have to admit, yeah, this kind of drags it down, and this is the time when The Simpsons... Sometimes they would do this. They'd imitate whatever's popular. The War and Pieces sketch, I don't know if this ever gets put on anyone's like top Treehouse of Horror sketches. I really like this one. Maybe it's because I've got a soft spot for Jumanji, That is the original one, the one with the board games, not the video games. But the way this is creatively done, I mean, there is so much imagination put into this. But then, of course, it does lead to some bad gags, and hey, it acknowledges that. I think it's funny. Master and Cadaver, this one was unexpectedly good to me. I did not expect to like this one as much as I did. I mean, I'd never seen the original that this is adapted from, Dead Calm. So the fact that they were able to pull this off really shows that there's some good writing going on there, and still was going on when The Simpsons were kind of... Okay, I'm sure this conversation has been had. The Simpsons, of course, is not running on all cylinders anymore, specifically Marge's voice, but hey, that's also a different topic. The fact that they can make that work, though, really makes this particular sketch work, and so I'm just going to have to say, like, okay, you pulled it off. Having this being Maggie's imagination, though, that doesn't really help the ending and stuff. I got a bit of a soft spot in this last one, the one called Tweenlight. Granted, I mean, I kind of like Twilight. I've seen all the movies. I've read at least 2 of the books. Their take on it is rather interesting because they basically really go out of their way not to follow the source material, really. I mean, Edmund, as the character is, has a father there, and he and Homer are starting to bond, which is really strange. I kind of thought, why did you go this particular direction? I mean, this idea of putting Milhouse there with as kind of like a little poodle werewolf, that was kind of an interesting idea. I kind of wish they had developed that a bit more, but they just kind of went with that one-off joke. Really? Come on. I mean, you guys have it right there. I don't know, but still enough to make me think, like, hey, that works, and these first 2 work really well. So this is why this is so very high on this list, and yeah.